The latest on the Pac-12 television talks, where it puts the Big 12 conference realignment. We'll speak with a media expert. Jim Williams joins us today. That's coming up on today's Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Josh Neighbors here, Locked On Big 12 podcast. Today we are brought to you all here on this Monday, April 17th, 2023 by the FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. Make sure you guys subscribe to Locked On Big 12 on YouTube. Also find us wherever you get your podcast, on Twitter at LO Big 12. You guys can find me at Josh Neighbors _. Joining us today, Jim Williams. Where to even start with your career? 7-time Emmy winner as a TV director, been involved in media consulting. You've been on top of this Big 12 and kind of Pac-12 situation. And so where I want to start, Jim, number one is thank you for coming on. Number two, as I've covered this for, basically approaching, I guess, with the Pac-12 situation a year now, the circle of people that have talked about conference realignment has grown. And I think from that standpoint, I'm not sure if you noticed the same thing, the idea of like, where should we get our information from? It feels like that has kind of changed. There are more people now offering information. And there was a point that I made the other day. The people who honestly know about what's happening remain a select few, although the number that are talking about it continues to expand.
There's an old saying, Josh, that those who know aren't talking and those who are talking don't know. I tend to believe that. I see, you go on Twitter, you go anywhere, you see sources said, it's like, who are these people?
Right.
When, my process, either writing or doing research on any of this having to do with Big 12, Pac-12, all of this, is I'm not going to state that a source told me anything if I don't think A, the source is credible, and B, that it brings something to the party. I'll give you, for instance, over the weekend, I talked to some people who were in the ACC. Okay. I asked them just curiously, when did you guys last talk to the Pac-12 about, doing some things together? They said, we're still talking to them. So, okay. So I just threw out on Twitter, by the way, Pac-12 and ACC continuing to talk about ventures they can do together. And then I literally put at the bottom of it, don't go crazy. This means nothing other than they're talking to each other. By an hour later, things have gone way off the rails. And it's just like, you gotta take the, and it's hard to do. You got to take the passion and whatever else you have in a way of bias out of this and just look at it for what it's worth. I didn't say that to cause grief. I simply brought it up as a point of interest. Okay. It had, I had reported, I wasn't the only one, a bunch of people reported last summer that they had conversations. Great. So does that mean that they're going to do something? Fine. So you try to help clarify things for both people in the Pac-12 as well as the Big 12.
Right. Because some folks might see that and say, well, the Pac-12 is very much alive if they're planning something with the ACC. But the reality is, if that fell through, the ACC's, that's no skin off their back. I mean, it falls through, right? So there's nothing really to panic about or think too much about.
That's like you and I sitting here today and saying, right, Josh, you know what? Let's have a barbecue next week. Okay. Well, midway through the week, it rains or you have something come up or I have something come up. And we say, you know what? We can't do it. Okay, fine. Right. Did we lose anything by having that conversation? No. Other than a barbecue, other than that, we didn't get it. But no, it's not that. I've seen people call into question John Skipper's knowledge of contracts, which
which is it's just absolutely curious, right? I mean, if anybody knows television contracts, it would be John Skipper.
Well, especially the ACC's contract,
right?
So, it's like there's almost there's an old saying, you can't defend crazy. And so you just let it go. But
so can we quickly just do the ACC thing really fast? So it's my understanding that their grant of rights is pretty much ironclad. I mean, it is going to be nearly impossible to break it. Now, some people say if a certain number of teams were to leave, it could do that. 8.
Yeah.
That is a large number of teams, people. It's half the league. And so when people are talking about it,
that's why it's so hard, right?
Right. People talk about movement. I mean, they're kind of set in, right? They're kind of set right now.
Well, it's ironclad. Now, the only place, and this is where Skipper came into the equation. Skipper talked about the possibility of a merger partnership between the Pac and the ACC. Mm-hmm. And the theory of the case that John brought up was that there is in the contract, the ACC network contract, that if you're outside of an ACC territory, it costs you between 50 and 70 cents per subscriber to carry the ACC network.
Right.
Automatically, if let's say one of the Pac-12 schools entered the ACC for this purpose, right, to grow the network. Let's just use Oregon for the moment. Then cable companies in Oregon would pay $2 instead of the 48 or 50 cents because that's what you get if you're in an ACC market. Okay, and that is written into the agreement, and that's how. So John had advanced the idea that maybe a merger / partnership, whatever, a way to get both sides revenue could be the merging of these two networks, the Pac-12 network and the ACC. It was a theoretical, okay, based on what John obviously knew of a contract, which John had some pretty good, expertise in. Does that mean the two sides are going to do it? No. It's a simple, this could happen, right. Just as easy it could not. But the point was that there was the only way for the two sides to actually work together and generate revenue, to your point, because it's an ironclad deal, was the ACC network contract had that accelerator clause in it. That was it.
Yeah, right. And so I see a lot of folks saying, well, we should turn our attention to the ACC. And unless the Big Ten and the SEC were like, all right, you take 4 and I'll take 3, and then the Big 12 takes 1. Like right. Nothing's like this is a dumb conversation. It's not a conversation worth having. And it's also, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say you're right. It's, hypotheticals are fun. Okay. That doesn't mean they're right.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Well, it's funny because I found myself talking, so much of kind of the earlier coverage of this was hypothetical. Oh my God, think about what the conference could be like. And we talked about it kind of to death. We know the players at this point in time. There's some variations there. There's some different examples of what it could look like and be like. But at this point in time, we're past that. We're trying to now go the opposite direction. Be like, all right, let's the toothpaste out of the tube, if you will. But we're trying to be like, all right, what is fact and what is fiction? I think that leads me to the next thing I want to ask you about is where we are right now, because this is my read on it, and tell me if this is what you're hearing or where you think we are. I think the Pac-12 right now, they're trying to find a deal that makes sense for them. And by makes sense, I think it's very challenging because the wants and needs of Oregon and Washington are different than Stanford and Cal, are different than Utah and Colorado and Arizona and Arizona State. And then obviously Oregon State, Washington State will kind of take anything at this point in time. And we know that a lot of these schools have a strong desire to stay together. They would not be out publicly talking about it if they did not desire that. Mm-hmm. At the same time, it sounds like a sufficient offer has not presented itself, whether it be because of a dollar figure, because of the amount of streaming plus the amount of cable, because of where that cable is, all of those factors. But a deal that does not work for them has not been presented. Also, there is an available offer for some of these schools to go to the Big 12. And I don't think anybody has made up their mind yet about what they're going to do, because at this moment in time, it doesn't feel like they have to. Now, it's my opinion they're starting to get a little close to maybe decision-making time, but they don't have to make a decision at this moment in time, although the pressure continues to mount.
No, I would agree with most of it, Josh. What I would say is this. I think that where we are with this is, can you live with a deal that is highly streaming with a 40 to 50% linear deal, or do you need north of that amount? Okay. Now, I wrote a piece for Forbes a couple weeks ago where it was I detailed the time and investment that Apple and Amazon have put into the Pac-12, okay, and how the Pac-12 has embraced, the entire tech industry. And as a matter of fact, if you look at it, you've got conservatively between 50 and 60,000 graduates of Pac-12 schools who are in the tech business. And so on one side, you've got the presidents of the universities who are openly courting students to their universities based on what Apple does, what's based on Amazon does, what's based on Microsoft and YouTube and all of it. And literally at the launch parties of Amazon's Prime Video and at Apple Plus TV, they birthed this. Okay, so now how do you go back to Tim, to all these guys and say, you know what, guys, it's really nice that Apple's in this and Amazon's in this, but we're gonna have to tell you no, because the basketball coach at Arizona is a little ticked off that he may not get the kind of exposure he needs.
Today's Locked On Big 12 podcast is brought to you all by the FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. You guys can go there today. Use FanDuel.com/LockedOn. You guys can sign up for free when you all do, and you have the opportunity to get up to $1,000 back in free bets when you guys go there today. Once again, FanDuel.com/LockedOn is where you go. And they got everything you all want. They've got the NBA playoffs going on, Major League Baseball going on. You guys can bet on the NFL draft coming up. You guys can bet on next year's NFL season, next year's college football season. And also, they've got the best interface out there. There's nobody who has a better, cleaner, sleeker look, and easier to use sportsbook, and easier to sign up at sportsbook with the best odds. Everything you could want in a sportsbook is there. Make every moment more at FanDuel.com/LockedOn today. Once again, FanDuel.com/LockedOn. But isn't that the argument here? Because this is the one. I'm not sure if I'm not sure what the right word to use for it. The human part of this is that recruiting, which is the lifeblood of these athletics, is way behind where the future of this is 100% in streaming, right? There's some live sports, but Amazon bought an NFL package. YouTube TV is going to have the new NFL Sunday ticket. Right. So that's where we're headed. We're headed in that direction.
The MLS went all in.
MLS went all the way there, and I think we're I think Champions League is on Paramount Plus. Boxing and UFC have been way ahead of this for a long time. So it's this weird dance, right? And I guess the Pac-12, I hadn't thought about the tech side of it, but they are so ingratiated in the tech culture. But could you do it could you hold on? We'll be with you guys soon enough. But we still need to be on cable, because when you go to mom and pops, when you're in the living room pitching the hey, how can you watch your son play? It doesn't need to be some long drawn out process where you have to download an app or pay for a service. I want to flip on ESPN and be able to see my son or daughter.
Right. The thing, Josh, that a lot of people are missing here, okay, is there a lot of people watching us right now have Apple Watches on or something like that.
Very true.
Okay. That was developed, those Apple Watches were developed with a grant of a lot of money to Stanford University, where in their, medical department, the medical school, they literally beta tested all of this stuff. Okay. So we look at things often through an athletic aspect. Okay. Mm-hmm. Athletics makes no money for the schools. Let me just say that as strongly as I can possibly say it. They make no money for these schools, okay? Research and development, 10 times the amount of money that an athletic budget is there. Okay. And in point of fact, in fairness, okay, there's only about 30 schools in the country that actually break even or make a little money in athletics.
But isn't that because they spend it all? I mean, they spend a lot of the money on, sports staff and the facilities and all those things. So,
yeah,
while they make the argument they don't break even, I mean, they just put it back into the athletics, whether as extravagant as it is at times.
But in fairness, Josh, in fairness to the athletic department, okay, all of the athletics departments are nonprofit organizations.
Right.
Okay? So they're not built to make money.
Right. They're built to spend the money they bring in.
They're exactly. They're trying. You try to get them to at least be self-sufficient, right? That's where they go. So I what I try to do here is split this to a point where understand that universities have many different ways that they like to look at things, and college presidents and athletic directors are not always on the same wavelength
page. Oh yeah.
So that's all I'm saying in that regard. And now here's the good thing for the Big 12, right? You got 4 schools that came in. They ran out and did the right thing. They expanded. They picked the right candidates. Then when Bowlesby left, and Muirmark came in, he went off and decided, okay, let me see if I can get a TV deal done so that everything that we do from this point forward shows that, at least, if nothing else, we are a stable organization. Okay. So even if we didn't have this sideshow going on in the Pac-12, the Big 12 would have to think very, very well of themselves from where they came a year ago. I mean, if you look at that, if you're going to go with stability behind the SEC and behind, the Big 10, you'd have to say that the most stable conference on the, of the 5 right now is the Big 12, because the ACC is having some, grief down with Clemson.
The television deal is awful. The television deal is really, truly bad.
Yeah, it is. And there's some schadenfreude there from me for John Swafford. Thank you very much, John, for doing that. And then there's the Pac-12 issues. So, but if you're a Big 12 person, if none of this ever happened, right, talking about the Pac-12, you have to feel comfortable that going forward, you're in a good place. So everything else pretty much is gravy. If you pick up a school from the Big 12, the Pac-12, or 2 schools or no schools, you'd still have to feel happy that, we're in a good place.
So this to me is where the Big 12, this is what they offer, right? I mean, this is not a tremendous amount of money that we're talking about from the Big 12, but what they offer is stability. They offer, they offer also too, as a commissioner who's, very clearly has done a fantastic job so far. And I think, it's been effusive praise across the board. It's great, but he's doing a very good job. And my question about this, if you're a Pac-12 president / brass at one of these schools, is how much kind of insecurity are you willing to put up with? Because I think it's been a fair amount. I mean, the amount, I thought those presidents going out there and posturing a few weeks ago, they look, I thought they'd be hammered more than they have been, because they basically completely lied. And that's what I thought they were doing. I thought, it was supposed to be a show of unity, and we are here to say, and I thought ASU's president, he kind of, what he didn't say was what he said was very illuminating, because he said, we're going to like the number that we're going to get, but also said, we're going to like the number we're going to get, as in they don't see it right now. They haven't seen the numbers. They haven't seen the right offer yet. And so I'm like, well, you can't be about this confident about an offer that you actually have not seen at this point in time. And so that was what was confusing to me about this. But you have timelines being pushed back repeatedly. Right. You have what it sounds like lack presentation of an acceptable offer across the board. You have the specter of 2 programs like Oregon and Washington, when it comes to football, want to be competing for college football championships. And look, that financial gap to the schools they're competing with is going to be way, way bigger if they keep staying in the Pac-12. So there's no guarantee they stay for long term. Mm-hmm. And with all of that, if you leave and go to the Big 12, you are joining a conference that is strong. That's going to that could hit the market even twice before the ACC does, because let's be honest, the Big 12 is not competing with the Big 10, the SEC. They're competing with the other conferences, but they'll hit the market twice before 2036 potentially. And so also when you leave and go to the Big 12, you weaken the Pac-12. So one competitor you have is now worse. And that even just strengthens the conference a bit more. And so I'm wondering if you believe this too, is there a certain line where somebody says, you know what, maybe we can get a deal done, but just as much as we want to stay, the insecurity continually is unacceptable at this point, and we need to do something to secure our status. I
think that the philosophy of the Pac-12 versus the Big 12 is different, and it's hard to explain it. It's hard to quantify it.
I understand. Yeah, I understand what you mean.
So that being said, let's take Arizona, for instance, okay, and Colorado, for instance. They may think that it's in their best interest to move to the Big 12, okay? But who wants to be first, right? I think what they want to do is have the cover of having a deal placed in front of them that they can say, you know what? I'm sorry. The deal, we waited, okay? We were presented the deal, and now we just realized we cannot, it's unsustainable for us to do that, okay? Now, why would you do that? You would do that for the ability to prove that, okay, we listened. You know, we were here, we listened, we took the slings and arrows that everybody was throwing at us, but, you know, it's just not acceptable. So it's more of a nuanced thing.
Oh, I understand. I mean, being first,
it's a cleaner getting out of the deal than rather rushing out and saying, all right, I'm leaving tomorrow. I don't care.
So is it your understanding yet that, like, I think the question I've had is, how many actual offers have been presented? I guess what would constitute an actual offer? Because this kind of gets to the crux of the issue is what works for Oregon and Washington, right? Mostly them, does not, that's a different standard than what everybody else might have.
Right. I think, honestly, at this point, I can't believe that they don't have at least soft numbers of what's out there. Okay.
And by no indication, do they have soft numbers?
I said I am guessing.
Right. I just didn't know if you had any information on this, because I agree with you. You'd feel like at some point in time you have to have some soft numbers.
Well, you're not going to have presidents go out and talk if they don't have a clue as to what is being offered. Now, remember that I hear this, well, they don't have any formal offers, excuse me. Well, that usually doesn't come until the very, very last thing.
Right.
You've gone, I would say, let's say you and I are negotiating, and you're negotiating for ESPN and or whomever, pick an organization. And I'm playing the role of George Kliavkoff today. We are changing back and forth papers. We're saying, okay, this is what I got to have. You send it back and said, sorry, I can't do that, but I can do this. Mm-hmm. How far can you go here? How far can you go there? You're going back and forth with multiple players here, okay? And in this case, multiple players who have never done this before, college deals. College deals are a whole lot more intricate than professional deals, okay? So you're working your way back and forth, papers changing back and forth to different people. Do they know the exact figure? No. Do they know a range? I have to think they know a range of what it is. And I've always said this. I honestly believe if they can hit a number north of 26, 27, even though it's a little bit shy of 31, I don't think they'll move.
I agree.
If they can get that. And that's with everything else, the caveat being everything else being equal, right? 50 or more percent of linear, I think that would stay. So I think what they're doing right now, and don't forget that the Arizona president or the Colorado people could be shooting a shot across the bow at George Kliavkoff saying, this is our marker, buddy. This is what we want. And so they're in some ways using the Big 12 to try to get what they want. It
That's
wouldn't be the first time that has happened.
it's what's interesting about the Big 12 piece of this is that, so it all ties in. The offer you mentioned, right? It's been widely reported the Pac-12 had the same offer on the table. And this goes to your point of it's not formal, right? It's not formal until it is, until we're at the finish line. All right, Fox is this much, ESPN's this much. We've all decided it. Here comes the offers.
Sure.
So, but you have, so you have all the offers there, and that's how it goes. Is there any chance that if you're a Pac-12 school like Oregon, and I think, like Colorado and Arizona, because I think the consensus now is that those are the two most likely programs to jump, just with the amount of, Colorado's been there before, and I think Arizona's president was pretty public, being like, "We've got no problem being in a conference where it's good, it's all basketball, and we're close to California, and we're a good entry point out there, so we're kind of cool with all of it." How much concern do you think there would be for them saying, "Well, you know what?" Big 12 saying, "Look, as time goes on, you guys are in a more desperate spot. And, the quality of our offer to you could change, if you're not hitting your mark," right? So is that a possibility at all? And once again, I think that's very unlikely, and it's a hypothetical, but it did happen from the television side of things. Is it insane to think that it could happen from the conference standpoint because they're all so tied in with TV?
Well, first of all, I would never say nothing is ever too insane.
Yeah, at this point in time, right. I mean, UCLA's playing Rutgers in a conference game coming up. So yeah,
can't wait to get to Piscataway and watch that.
Right.
Anyway, I think when the conversations between the Big 12 and schools in the Pac-12, Brett Yormark is nothing if not savvy. Okay, I know that the last thing that any of these athletic directors, and specifically these presidents, want to do is have a conversation where, you're being pushed to do something. That would be a huge mistake, and I don't think they made it. I think that when they had these conversations, they were soft sell. Okay, they're like, "Okay, look, guys, we know you want to stay together. We were just in the same boat, a year ago. We understand the insecurity of what happens tomorrow. We don't know. Okay. We want you to know that we're here. Okay. We're going to be here. We want you to come to our, if anything and everything goes wrong and you don't want to be there anymore, we feel that we offer a very good alternative. I don't think a hard sell where you start saying, well, we're not going to be here. We'll have to reduce that price is a theory that works on the Pac-12. It might have worked on others, but it's not going to work on the Pac-12.
Right.
They're going to turn around and say, "Look, buddy, we'll eat that extra. If it's $4 million a year more or less, I don't care. We're not moving." So I don't think that there was a big hard sell for the Big 12 because I don't think they need to. I think they are sitting there going, "Look, we're giving you. If you want to come, the door's open." Okay. Because they realize this thing is not going to go on forever. Okay. If it goes on for another month or perhaps 2 months, okay, fine. What's 2 months? You got the time. So there's no sense in pushing them because that could go the wrong way. It's just being there as someone who can say, "Look, we're here. We offer an alternative that we feel is very, very good. We don't have to sell it any harder."
In the end, financially, do you think it's going to be better? Because this is, I think the best thing the Big 12 can offer is the fact that a weakened Pac-12 is less of whatever it is. I've kind of been calling it the zombie Pac-12. If schools leave and the value is weakened, like I can't see Oregon and Washington wanting to stay around. I feel like they'd go somewhere else, even for part-time, lesser money, and then eventually as a full member. I feel like that the idea of a stronger Big 12, the next television cycle, next contract cycle is kind of the big selling point, right? Because it's, look, we might be the only Power 5 game west of the Mississippi, or I guess west of the Rockies, outside of the two Big Ten, maybe even 4 Big 12 Big 10 schools, TV companies have to fill out their TV schedule, and we offer games start at 11 a.m. or 11 p.m. and people will come to us for program. Do you think that's the number one? I mean, I know we talked about the stability part of it, but is that kind of down the line a big selling point, you think?
I think that what they're concerned about, or what anybody should be concerned about, is we're hitting a sports recession. Okay. And you've got Notre Dame's going to be up for a contract here. You've got the championship, the bowl championship, series, the college football playoffs. That's up. That contract's up. You've got NASCAR's contracts up. You got NBA's contracts going to be up. There's a finite amount of money that they're going to have to spend.
Right.
And I think we might be at the top of that college spear now. Okay. That deal, which, Kevin Warren got for moving on.
$1 billion a year for a conference that has Rutgers and Maryland. And I know as much as they're like, we've gotten the DC, you know this, because I guess Maryland, I'm from Virginia. Right. Maryland's like, when they're good, they're semi-big, but they haven't been like relevant enough to be big in DC for a long time.
Well, I mean, that deal was political. Okay. They wanted the market. And that's why, I mean, the Big 12 is very strategic about what they do. They are not going to be pushed into doing anything. I had one guy tell me, from the Big 12, from the Big 10, I'm getting all the bigs messed up.
Yeah, the numbers are wrong. The numbers are wrong anyway.
Right. So the Big 10 says, it's not our problem if Oregon and Washington don't like what they're doing.
Right.
And they're not going to be pushed to do anything. And I think that that's why they went and got Tony Petitti. I mean, Tony's a genius. Okay. He will be fine. He'll make life good. He's a very low key guy. So, he's the opposite of Kevin Warren. And so I think that bodes well for them. But to get to your point, I think that the strength of the Pac-12 teams in the Big 12 is that, okay, we could do well in future. Okay. And I can't stress this enough because I know people are going to get upset, but I'm sorry. They're going to want to try. And I'm not saying all of them, because we talked about Arizona, we talked about Colorado. There's going to be a lot of them are going to try like hell to stay together because of the money and the academic aspect of this. And I know you're sitting there going, well, why in the hell? Well, believe me, when you look at the amount of money that's being poured into those universities, to cut yourself off from that and go to the Big 12, that's a tough thing to do. And that's not throwing shade on any Big 12 school, because they're
look, the Pac-12 schools are they're a lot of tremendous academic institutions. On the whole, I mean, I've kept you way too long. I appreciate you giving us all this time. Timeline for you on this. I saw you tweeted out, May. Yeah. So you feel like that's a reasonable timeline? Because I think, to me, like, baseball's happening now, softball's happening now, but colleges are almost done here in the next month or so. And spring football games have already happened. So this is actually kind of when we really start turning the page. I mean, the spring football games are ostensibly the 2020, it's 2023, 2024 football team. So we've kind of almost turned the page to the last year of the Pac-12 TV contract. So when do you see a resolution to this, whatever that resolution may be? And once again, I will stress enough, I think you and I are on the same page. Right. Nobody knows what the resolution will be because nobody's deciding it.
Gosh, if I did, I'd tell you.
And you make a lot of money doing it. You can put a 2-minute YouTube video or 5-minute YouTube video up, and you get 20 billion views on it, most likely.
You'd be in good shape. I don't, but the reason I said May that would put them at the 11-month mark. It was the 11 months that it took the Big 10 to get the deal that they got. Okay, so I'm thinking you can't ask presidents and athletic directors to push beyond that period of time. And I don't honestly think they're that far apart from doing something. Okay. And I've said this to everybody.
You mean the TV companies and the Pac-12 schools?
Yeah, I don't think they're that far away from getting something done. Okay. I don't think they're that far. I do believe that it's going to come down to linear versus, do we want to take more money and go streaming, or do we want to take less money, stay together, and get the linear package that, hitting the sweet spot? Unless something happens, and Lord knows it could, where, George Kliavkoff pulls off this massive, spectacular deal. I don't know that would be happening. I don't necessarily believe that would be happening, but we've been surprised before. The only thing I caution people is you hear a lot about networks being out of things, and I will tell you from personal experience that a network can be out today, and by the time we finish this podcast, they could have signed a deal with them.
Right.
So I wouldn't rule anybody out, just like I wouldn't necessarily say.
Even like a Fox? You wouldn't rule Fox out?
No, not at all. Mm-hmm. Again, Eric Shanks will pick up that phone, and he'll talk. And if the deal is the right deal for him, then he'll take it. And so, look, what we're going to find out very, very soon is, if the deal is something that the four corner schools will this is how I split it up. The four corner schools can live with, as well as Oregon and, Washington and Stanford and Cal. So I really think that that's where we are, that, the Big 12 is not going to have to wait long to find out if they're going to get some new partners. And I put May there because I figured that's a reasonable 11 months, because it took 11 months to do the Big 10 deal. 11 months is a reasonable amount. I don't think they're that far apart, because there's no way that presidents and athletic directors are going to come out and talk about this stuff if they don't think that they're relatively close to a deal. It may not be the deal they want, which is why they haven't signed it yet. Remember, they may sign it. In these deals, you look at the deal, you have to vote on the deal, okay? And in the case of the the case of the Pac-12, just like the Big 12 or anybody else, it has to be a supermajority. So if you got 10, that means 8. 8 schools have to approve this. Then you go to a grant of rights, okay? So that's how the process works. And so if the process is, if I can accept it, okay, fine, then I'll sign the grant of rights. If I can't accept it, then there's no sense in signing a grant of rights, okay? And one of the other things, just to backtrack just for a sec, one of the things that benefited the Big 12 and Brett Muirmark is when they went in to do the deal with Fox and ESPN, it was an extension of the deal. It wasn't a totally start from the beginning deal. And so they were able to pull that thing through quickly. So that's a benefit to them.
Right.
But I think we're not going to have to wait long. And I think if the Pac-12 and the Big 12 fans will be put under their misery from this standpoint relatively soon, and we'll know who's staying where or who's going where, or if anybody's going. So we'll see.
Jim, I appreciate the time and all the insight. It's been very educational for me, and hopefully for all the viewers and listeners out there. Where can folks find you and your work and all of its variety?
You can find me on, I do a column for Forbes and for Zinger, which is a Forbes subsidiary, easy for me to say. On Twitter at JW Media DC. And, basically from that standpoint, I try to keep people, I try to play both sides so people know that it's fair, and I give you whatever information I got, and come on, it's always fun to come on, Josh, and talk with people like you, because you guys, you and your followers make me aware of what's going on in your conference, and I learn from them, and so hopefully you can learn from each other.
Yeah, I just like to, as much as I got the Big 12 flag behind me, but I think the one thing is you try to cover this and be fair about it, and not, because I think out of all of us, you mentioned at the beginning, we were in the same spot, a little while ago, right? And there's a small part of me that kind of wants Pac-12 to hang on, because that means we're not going to just go straight to super conferences and the sport that we know and love go away. So, Jim, Appreciate the time.
My
And if you do get that big update, please come back on the show and give
I'll
it.
text you. Yes.
All right. Thank you so much, Jim. We appreciate it.
Thank you.